Well, we're back for some Bleach Soul Resonance, and I wanted to talk about, the free-to-play struggle when it comes to gacha games and this person's concerns. And this is not a free pass to harshly criticize this person or harshly criticize anyone who responds to this person. Everyone has their own interpretation of how free-to-play or not free-to-play something feels, and I don't ever want to wage like a campaign against people, but I was reading through this because, I saw the title and it was possible concerns, questions in light of the info about next patch. And because it says questions, I feel like it's then, as someone who is, my channel is free to play focused, questions means I feel obligated to sort of answer. Because regardless of whether you think a question or a concern is valid or invalid, it does bear, speculating upon, because it's usually not the case that one person shares this opinion solely. I've seen a lot of people be like, where are the Jade? Where are the Jade? Where are the Jade? Even though to, I think most people, we understand that this is a crazy free-to-play gacha, right? So let's just read it through and then we're going to tackle this. But like I said, we're not going to, dig at this person or anything. We're not going to be, assholes about this. So what free-to-play concerns would be present? The banners after Grimjo being better or stronger SSRs might feel like we wasted our Jades on whoever wasn't Geen or Aizen, because Jades and tickets are hard to come by. We're going to take this step by step. Let's talk about that. So obviously this is a gacha game. Gacha games typically power creep their characters, but let's kind of be honest about this. Boom, the game launches. The game launches with Bankai Ichigo as its SSR. It's a limited SSR character. I don't have Bankai Ichigo here, but, for all intents, let's just say this is like Bankai Ichigo, right? That's Bankai Ichigo is the main SSR in the game. He is the premier unit. Urahara is better than him. 100%. 100% Urahara is better than him. I know that you could, B6, Bankai Ichigo, though, blah, blah, blah. I'm a free-to-play channel. I'm going to speak from a free-to-play lens. Urahara is better than Bankai Ichigo the day the game drops. 100%. I would say that to anyone. 100%. Okay, so there's one. We move to Toshiro. Toshiro is an explosive DPS. He's a very good DPS. He is a little dupe dependent to me. I think Boundary 2 is about where I would say, as a free-to-play player, you want to grab him. And his weapon, obviously I don't have his weapon here, but from, seeing his performance, I don't grade Toshiro like unfairly. It's why I don't showcase Toshiro, because I skipped his weapon thinking this game wouldn't be that free to play friendly. Not that they didn't show that it would be, just that I had my doubts, because gacha games usually aren't, right? So I skipped his weapon thinking, okay, I have to say, because what if Kenpachi's next? What if Aizen's next? What if Geen is next? And I like these characters. What if the Jade runs out suddenly? It's very common that the first two characters, you get their weapon, you get the character, you get all their boundaries, blah blah blah. There's so much resources, and then it just dries up. Now we know in hindsight that that's not what happened, but at the time I couldn't have known that as a free-to-play player, right? As someone trying to make free-to-play, videos for this game. But guess what? I'm gonna say that Urahara was better than him too. I am. I would say that Urahara, for a free-to-play player, was still the best character in the game, right? We go on and we get Aizen. First time we can honestly say that we saw genuine power creep better than Urahara. This character is insane. Now we had two characters, Urahara and Aizen, who could be actually fighting for that sort of role in the game, right? That like best spot. Geen comes out. Geen, very, very strong DPS. Probably better than Toshiro and Bankai Ichigo the day he dropped and got his, shifted in power and stuff, alongside actually getting an Angiku in the game, which took a little bit. It did take a bit. It took like a week, or it took like week 2 of his celebration or something like that. But obviously very powerful. They started stacking the effects that would sort of define the game, which is this impale scaling ailment damage comp, right? It just was such that the normal builds couldn't really keep up. Geen, Urahara plus Aizen or Toshiro, or not Toshiro, Tosen, that was essentially the game, right? We get a character like Kenpachi then. Kenpachi very strong Very, very strong. Kenpachi, and by the way, do you notice how I've gotten all of these characters up until this point? I haven't missed any. For anyone who's wondering, I did start using the monthly card. You can see reclaims in 23 days, but guess what? I didn't get this until my Yuri's banner. So this has only affected pulling on Soifon. The reason I have 15,000 Jade is because I got very lucky. Very lucky pulling Soifon in only tickets, which were free-to-play tickets, and then very lucky in pulling her again in only about 4,000 Jade, right? But even then, look at that, look how fast that stacks up. One time, essentially not having to like hard pull on a banner, and I'm exploding with Jade, right? But again, all of these characters I've gotten, why don't I have Bankai Ichigo? I just didn't feel like re-rolling. That was it, purely it. We knew that Kenpachi was already sort of leaked in the files, and in my head, we were going to get Kenpachi. I didn't really understand the way the game would sort of shake out, and I said, okay, I'll just wait for Kenpachi. He's probably going to be the next or the character after that, you know? So I was, but of course, now we know he was like the fourth character or something, fifth character, but at the point, we didn't know that, right? We go into Nelel. I would say Powercreep Aizen, at least to some extent, mostly because of her synergies with Gin, but Powercreep Aizen, not that much though. I wouldn't say it was so explosive. I mean, Aizen was still doing his work. I have him at Boundary 0. Until you got here where she's giving 80% crit damage, it's not so much that it was crazy. Also, a ton of rewards during this Chinese New Year celebration. Again, I pulled on this character, I got Boundary 2 of her, and guess who comes next? My Yuri, and I was able to pull him. And the only thing that happened is I pulled him, and then I had to wait a few days to grab some tickets, and Jade had to let the events pan out so I could grab his weapon. But again, Boundary 0 character, you don't need more boundaries. So there was a point where I pulled a Boundary 2 character. By the way, at this point, I'm not spending $5 a month on the game. I'm still completely raw dogging everything in the game. We move on to Soifon. Soifon, very strong character. I end up pulling her on tickets, so I say, you know what? I'm going to come back. I'm going to get her Boundary 1 at some point because, I mean, I pulled her completely free on tickets, free-to-play tickets, so I might as well use some Jade to get her. Of course, now we know that I end up getting very lucky during that session as well and pull her Boundary 1 in a very small amount of Jade 2. That's sort of the inconsistent nature of gachas. Sometimes you're just going to hit, and so long as you don't overcommit, you're good. I mean, at any point, I could have pulled for Boundary 1 Aizen when he reran. I could have pulled for Gin Boundary 1. I could have pulled for Toshiro's weapon, but how could I have known the game would be this free-to-play friendly that I definitely could have pulled for his weapon? Like, at this point, I regret not getting Toshiro's weapon, and now that we know that Arabelle is probably going to be our DPS coming out of half anniversary, I feel bad because I'm like, man, I wish I could have played with Toshiro's weapon more, but there's no reason for me to really get it because I'd rather just get the new one, right? But even then, this is one of the strongest characters in the game easily. This character is a god DPS. So for the fear of like these characters just getting completely aged out, the rate, I mean, I have played versions of Dokkan Battle where they literally release a character who cannot pair up with characters on the team they're intended to be ran, and everyone exploded. Hey, change this. Please change this. And guess what? Dokkan's not dealing with Shueisha like Bleach Soul Resonance is. Dokkan just said no. When Tech Zamasu and Int Zamasu, I believe, couldn't link up. It was like a Tech Zamasu and another Zamasu. It might have been Int Zamasu. When they could not link up at all, they could not get 6 out of 6 links because they were quote unquote named the same thing. That was it. It was just over. Like in Bleach Soul Resonance, we're seeing buffs constantly. Kenpachi's about to get buffed again. They literally told us that. You know? So, you know, Toshiro got buffed. Aizen got buffed. These characters are back in a big way. You know? What if the Captain, Commander, and Espada 1 get released back-to-back? You'll be able to pull them. A free-to-play might be sad they need to skip one or both. You don't need to skip one or both. I mean, are you pulling for boundaries? Not to interrupt this person, but are you like pulling for boundaries a lot or something? I don't know. I don't think I've ever felt like so long as you're doing the content you're doing your weeklies, you're not skipping days, you just get so much. It's so hard to end a banner release and not have resources, because so let's take my Mayuri experience for example. Again, when Mayuri came out, I had pulled for Boundary 2 Nellel. I still went into his banner with enough Jade to pull him, but of course we were like, okay, there's going to be a few days where I just need to wait for the celebration to play out, then we'll grab his weapon, right? That means that even if you're like spilling over into the next celebration, you'll still pull the character. You might not pull them the day they drop, but you'll pull them throughout the celebration, almost certainly. Free-to-play man might be sad to skip both. The upcoming Spirit SSR might be better than Kisuke. Yeah. Might make every free-to-play invest in level 100 or B1 Kisuke as a meta sheep, and they might feel they upgrade with tiers and con got wasted. No, they don't. They're not wasted, because guess what? We go to battle, we go to adventure, and we go down here. There's 300 Jade plus many more rewards locked behind these things. We need these keys, and to get it, you need three teams. And Kisuke's right there. And guess what? Kisuke's right there. I had to use Rangiku for this team. So this is not optimal. If we get Zelapero and he's as good as Kisuke off the Spirit team, guess what? I could have put him on this Soifon team. Let's say, you know, like this Soifon team, and then I could have put Mayuri, or who was I using just now? Rangiku or whatever. Yurahara. Oh my god, I blinked so hard. I could have used Leporo right here, and then use Yurahara right here. This literally used to be Gein's team. This was his team. That's 3 teams necessary. You know what I mean? It stands to reason that we're not going to run out of events where we need 3 teams, right? I think that'll continue to be a thing, especially it's less of a thing in super hard content now, but as the roster expands, the expectation that you have 3 teams is going to start coming up more. 100% it is. The reason it's not coming up as much now is because the average, you know, person joining the game isn't going to get close to. I mean, they don't want you literally running like Chad and shit. You know what I mean? But this type of stuff where they like lock you out of just using, you know, the same 2 teams every single time, I would expect this to increase in its regularity. So yeah, there's no wasting of Kisuke, and even if, you know, Kisuke is considered like a waste, quote unquote, what if someone doesn't have a Spirit team? I don't really have a Spirit team right now. In all likelihood, I literally could afford to skip Zelaporo until someone like Audibel comes out, and then guess what? Now I'm running Audibel, Aizen, and Yurahara, and nothing's really changed for me, because I've just saved more for Grimjaw. Yurahara is still good. Yurahara, I really feel like people are sort of seeing like Yurahara is going to get power crept. What if he's a waste? I have 153 ult charge and 215% crit damage, right? I give 40% of my crit damage to my teammates. Isn't that like 70% or something like that? It's a little bit under that. It's like 67, 65 or something, some number. I'm not, don't bother me with the specifics, the math of it all. It's like 57, 50, it's something in there. You can't really duplicate that easily. I mean, my Yuri does it with Terror. He gives 100%, but you have to inflict an ailment, right? That's like the point, is that if you don't inflict an ailment, that doesn't happen. Yes, there we go. I need to boost him, by the way, so he gets his full his full passive. He'll probably be the next character to go to 100 while we're kind of like waiting for the next thing. But yeah, you have to inflict a debuff. If you don't inflict a debuff, if your name is Yoruichi and you do not inflict debuffs, you can't use this character, right? So you just want to use Yurahara. like these, it's not all the same. Yodohara still does something extremely powerful. You know what I mean? I don't feel like them saying he will be better than the shopkeeper is like this major blow to teams, because he should be. He is a limited support character. He's a limited character still, right? But it doesn't really make Yodohara suddenly this awful character who can't exist, right? And again, I say, this is nothing against this person. I am just speaking plainly. I hope I'm not sounding disrespectful. You know, I hope I'm not coming out. They might feel the upgrade materials got wasted. Toshiro mains might feel betrayed due to the amount of investment as well, since it was mentioned a new spirit DPS is arriving. Toshiro's been in the game for Toshiro is the single oldest, like, character to not be replaced, right? Bankai Ichigo fans got out of here fast. Kenpachi showed up pretty quick. If Toshiro fans feel betrayed, I mean, let's say you're a Toshiro fan and you literally just got buffed. This character does like 100 million damage on his ult. Let's say you're a big Toshiro fan and actually you got a boundary. You got a boundary too. I'm going to go ahead and say this again because I've said this before, but it bears repeating. I think DPS characters are the most replaceable in that they almost never completely carry their own weight. Right now we're seeing that with Tactics character. If you wanted to make this point for Byakuya that, oh my god, I'm such a big Byakuya fan and he's not as good as Aizen, you know, you're within your right to do that. But if I really like Kenpachi and I have him at B2, like say I had him at B2, I have him at B1, but say I had him at B2, a new DPS coming out who's B0 almost certainly doesn't end up out damaging my B2 Kenpachi if I'm a real big Kenpachi fan. In the same way that I think we could end up seeing Adabel clash with Toshiro, but if you have like a B2 Toshiro, if you're a big fan, if you have a B4 Toshiro, maybe you really like, maybe you got him on the initial run, then you got him on the rerun or something. Like, you like your character, you're a husbando or a waifu person, you like the character that you like. You don't really get gapped by like B0 characters. That's why we compare B0 characters typically to B0 characters. When Nellel came out, she had a slight edge on B0 Aizen. One of those reasons why is because she fits so well with the best team in the game, which is Thrust. But it wasn't a landslide. It wasn't this like huge, especially once he got buffed. Oh my god. Now that he's buffed, it's even closer, right? But if you're someone who's a big Aizen fan and you have Boundary 4 Aizen, Boundary 4 Aizen is like not weaker suddenly than like Boundary 0 or Boundary 1 or even Boundary 2 Nellel. I'd say that Boundary 2 Nellel and maybe around Boundary 4 Aizen have similar like use cases for what they're providing for teams, especially because Aizen we use as a main DPS and Nellel can't, right? These characters still have value, and that's not normal. Like, we don't see that a lot in gacha. Like, when that happens in Dokkan, those characters get the fuck out of here. They don't come back. You know what I mean? So it's not really a death sentence. I feel like Toshiro's going to be fine. The 3-person co-op dungeon sounds like penalizing every free-to-play player simply for not having 3 SSRs at B6 because it's a gacha game for casual gaming, and not Dark Souls 1-player death having a heavy penalty sounds too harsh. I will say that if we're just speculating, we have no context at all. There is no piece of content in the game currently that like thanklessly rewards like whales. If it ends up being the case that this new piece of content punishes free-to-play players a little bit more than the other stuff, I don't know. I don't really want to be like this person, but Bleach Soul Resonance does need to sort of pander to whales a little bit more. At least with gameplay. I've played a lot of like gacha in my life. I really like Epic 7. Epic 7 panders to whales by giving them a actual ranked mode. It's PvP, right? The whales, beyond just team building, will have more stats than you. And you can still beat them with team building. If you have a knowledge of team building, if you have a knowledge of drafting, you can still work your way around it to some extent. but long-time whale players will just have an easier mode of doing that. In Bleach Soul Resonance, there's almost no reason at all to be a whale. And I do think that's kind of a problem if this game wants to last. People are always talking about, oh, Bleach Soul Resonance, what if it dies? Bleach Soul Resonance won't die because of not appealing to free-to-plays. Bleach Soul Resonance is arguably appealing to free-to-plays too much. It actually does. They do need to start adding things for whales to do. And I'm saying this as a free-to-play channel. Sorry, I had to turn off my heater. I'm saying this as a free-to-play channel. Like, I kind of don't mind if whales get a bit of an edge in whatever comes up next. I know people hate hearing that, but your free-to-play ass stands on the shoulders of whales paying for the game to exist, you know? Like, and right now, I don't think there's enough reason for whales to want to do that. I mean, Boundary 1 is really good, which isn't that expensive to get. Boundary 2 is pretty good. Boundary 3 is whatever. Reducing strike resistance of enemies. Yeah, this is good. 20%. Increase all damage they receive by 15%. That's good. And this one doesn't add a mechanic like Aizen's B4, which literally changes him from a tactics character to a DPS character, right? So Soifon immediately is a character who's less reliant on boundaries to get the wholeness of her game plan off, right? It's not like they gave her something like Aizen where like suddenly she's firing 18 rockets a minute or something like that, right? That's like Aizen B4, he's going the fuck off, right? I don't know. Just some quick thoughts. So let's see if there are any comments that seem particularly interesting. Jades are hard to get. Yeah, this is ridiculous. Yeah, you're pretty much guaranteed the unit and the weapon in every patch with the Jade and tickets they give us rewards. Yeah, this is literally true. If you are playing every day, if you are doing the content is really fast most of the time. There's very little. Weeklies reset, and you might have to take 3 extra minutes doing something. Rule of a free-to-play playing a gacha: never expect a unit is future-proof, and don't go for dupes unless you are okay with the consequences. 100%. Any company, whether generous or greedy, is trying to get you to summon, so you may be tempted to make purchases. Yes, this game lets free-to-plays keep up to an extent, but reminder, this is a gacha game. There is no money to be made. And there is money to be made, rather. This is exactly the philosophy, right? It is insane that a game based on an IP like Bleach Soul Resonance operates the way it does. This is not Zenless Zone Zero. This is not Honkai Star Rail. This is not Genshin. This is not a game that is just someone like, this is not Arknight, right? This is not a game where they're just having to make up a bunch of characters who are wearing tech wear for some reason, because for some reason every new gacha has to have characters in tech wear. This is a game based on an existing IP. People keep saying that like once Mirror High comes out, you know, Bleach is gonna really be in for it. I promise you, Mirror's High is going to be a game made by a JP company from what it seems like. And if it is anything like Dokkan, free-to-plays who started in Bleach Soul Resonance are going to get their asses kicked, because I have been saving for months in Dokkan, and I have made a third of what it takes to pity a character in that game, which means I've skipped 3, 4, maybe even coming up on 5 characters in the same time of Bleach Soul Resonance, where I've pulled on every single character that's ever came out, except Bankai Ichigo, who I just did not want. I don't know. This is the nature of gacha. Release will always be stronger than the next. And by the way, it's important to say, not that much stronger. Let's go back to the game really quickly. Let's just think about this. Always stronger than the next. I think that person's right, by the way. I'm just saying, always stronger than the next. Toshiro came out. He and Bankai Ichigo were pretty similar. Gin came out. He was a bit better than Toshiro and Bankai Ichigo, but not by that much, especially once you started accounting for dupes. I actually think that Toshiro at B2 was better than Gin at the time. The reason that Gin really shot up is because he got a bunch of fixes and buffs, and then his team got built around him, right? And things like Rangiku and stuff, right? His team got built around him. Aizen came out, arguably the best character in the game. Actually, inarguably the best character in the game. And we'd say this is the first time it wasn't really close. But everyone wants to pull for Aizen. Who doesn't want to pull for Aizen? This is At the time, I said, this is Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta. Everyone wants this guy. Kenpachi came out. On the moment he came out on release, he was probably worse than the other DPSs, but I was there. That's my GOAT. He got buffed, and I would say without any boundaries, he was probably edging out the best DPS in the game versus the other B0 units, but Gin also had a better team. So you could argue it still wasn't really the case for Kenpachi. Kenpachi was still like just equal to the other DPSs. Soifon came out about parity, or actually I guess I should say Nelel came out. Nelel came out, wasn't really gapping Aizen. She did have a lot of bugs and stuff, but even once those got fixed, it wasn't like she was like turbo gapping Aizen. It was just that Nelel was on a team designed for her with Gin, right? The mechanic was just so powerful, but in terms of character vacuum power, I'd say Nelel and Aizen were really close. Really, really close. I think she was better. I do think she was better, but I wouldn't separate these characters. Right? Mayuri comes out. He has some issues. He needs some buffs. They end up giving him this, which is really powerful, this pool, which helps him proc with Gin. But again, we sort of see his power in that he has the perfect team. Gin, Nelel, and Mayuri are the first complete team. So they feel explosively better in a lot of respects, but I wouldn't really say that the difference is so night and day between him and having like a Kisuke, who is a free-to-play character at Boundary 2, right? I don't have him at Boundary 2, but I mean, even then, I think he's a much better character with like Soifon and Yoruichi, right? Soifon comes out. I'd say she's about the same strength as Nelel at B0, you know? Of course, I have to keep in mind that I do have Boundary 2 Nelel, but I think this character is very strong. But even then, people start arguing, oh, actually, Soifon is weak. Soifon needs major buffs. And it's like, well, no. Soifon does exactly what she needs for Yoruichi, but she's essentially made for Grimjaw, who's going to come out in about a month and some change from now. So it's like, we know that. We know those things to be true, right? But we literally had people almost at every single pass. We really haven't had like a huge valley gap in power between these characters. If anything, it's been kind of rough for the newer characters because they're not gapping as much as people expect. So you want them not release units, of course. I mean, again, you know, it would be nice. This is funny though. We've really been getting enough Jade to ensure characters. Maybe this would be the last one. Let me see. You never played Gotcha before. Yeah, we won't go too far, but some people just live to doom pose. Yeah, we won't. I'm not gonna go too far. I'm not gonna go too far on. I'm not gonna go too hard on them. I'm not gonna go too hard on them because I'm trying to keep this civil. But we've literally been enough free-to-play Jade to ensure each character plus weapon each time. It's true. You will not have to skip one. You will have to choose whether you want to get boundaries or essential for characters, but that's what it means to be free-to-play. I think this is 100% on the mark. I think that gear has been more of a wall for every single player, even whales, than getting the character. This is a gacha where the character is essentially guaranteed, but the gear isn't. And I think that's what's getting people. I even made a video early on saying, hey, it might be worth skipping a character just so you can build your other characters sometimes. Seeing as I said we'll be getting more rewards, there's little concern you will suddenly start having to skip characters if you aren't shooting for boundaries or ascension. It's true. And even if you are, by the way, like me, the moment you get even slightly lucky on a banner, the moment you can just snap pull a character with tickets or snap pull a character in the first like 2 multis, you suddenly have so many options. I'm on genuinely. It's almost like you can pull a boundary for free the moment you even get slightly lucky on a banner. And with there being no 50-50, it's not too bad. I mean, there are games I've played where the first time you see a 5-star, it's a 50-50 even if you didn't reach pity. Like they just 50-50 you then and there immediately. It's like, fuck, man. Free-to-play people are still reporting being able to complete content just fine. It's harder for them, but that's to be expected. They still can complete the content though, which is the important part. Yeah, especially the longer you play, this is not a problem at all. I could see it during... So what's happened is the classic gacha thing, which is there are more characters, the characters are stronger. So if you start a new account and you don't have 2 teams built with limited characters, you'll get sort of diffed by the fact that your playing behind the content power creep. But if you've just been playing, I don't feel like you should even notice a difference. Like, there's been very few times where I was like, whoa, I need to like lock back. I need to come back to this. Like, it's usually pretty chill. That's a feeling portrayed. Just, do you think they were never going to release another Spirit Assault ever? Yeah, live service game. They rushed to release new ones to obsolete one. Yeah, it pulls a BBS where they were. Yeah, what should happen is it's able to be using for a good time. It just might be harder to use them, but it's still doable. Yeah. One thing to, and again, like I said, I don't want to dig on this person too long or anything, but we'll just sort of end here, which is, I listed every single character bar Bankai Ichigo, who is still fine, by the way. If you didn't want Kenpachi, you can still just use Bankai Ichigo. I listed all of them. I use every single character that you see here. I use all of them regularly. The only one who I'm not using regularly is Toshiro, but it's because I don't have his weapon. And the reason I don't have his weapon isn't because I thought Toshiro was going to be bad. I just didn't know how free-to-play friendly this game was going to be, and I wanted to make content for the game, and I wanted to make videos, and I wanted to stay on curve. If I could go back and tell myself, please pull for Toshiro's weapon, I would. He's great. He's fantastic. He's insanely good, right? I just thought, like, oh my god, it's going to slow down at some point. At some point, they're going to stop giving us 10,000 Jade every single banner. And they didn't. They didn't stop at all. I use every character you just saw. There's none of these characters who have supposedly they're going to release a new character and power creep the old one. I've been using every single one. You know? There were times where I was still using Komamura for stuff. There's been times where I'm still using Byakuya for stuff, and this character is definitely power crept. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't worry about it too much. I think, you know, the doom and gloom is natural when it comes to gacha, but it's not so worth getting into yet. I'll be the first one to tell you, if Bleach Soul Resonance starts doing some bullshit, people like me, people like Giku, people like Aaron, we'll be there. We'll be there to be like, hey, they're fucking us this time, but they just haven't. I mean, any frustration towards the BSR team has been on marketing, which they probably aren't allowed to dig super deep into. Shueisha, we know how that goes. And probably the time crunch of making units and then having to buff them later is a apt frustration. I'm not too frustrated by that, because even the characters, I just see it as like, the characters are fun. I want to play the characters. We always able to get the characters. So if they also get buffed at some point, then yippee. And if they don't get buffed, then I still had a good time. But yeah, I know that's not the same for everyone. I don't think everyone should have that mindset. But yeah, long video here. We ranted for a bit, but I had a lot to say in regards to this. I don't want to come off as just like a pure like BSR glazer, but when you have the context of playing other gacha games, it's really hard to ignore when something is as generous as BSR has been. That's just how it is. That's just how it goes. I don't know what else to say in that regard. Like, if you've played, I mean, I played Arknight's Enfield for a bit. The characters didn't end up like really grabbing me, but I played at least over 10 hours. And in that 10 hours, I was unable to get the character that released with the game. This like a big claymore sword girl who I just figured I'd pull because, you know, she's a first limited character and I wasn't really pressed. And if you spend 10 hours playing Bleach Soul Resonance, you would have pulled like two of the limited characters by then, like in pure playtime hours, right? Like, I don't know. But with all that being said, that was a fun little talking head video, a fun little listen. I've been Lone though. Again, no ill will towards anyone who posted in that thread or had questions or concerns. Questions are good. Questions can be answered. Be very civil. But like if you liked the video, subscribe to the club. We all go make it, and peace.